Our Father who art in heaven, we thank you again for your blessings in our lives. We thank you, dear Father, for your guidance by thy Spirit. I pray that your Holy Spirit may be upon us as we look into this topic, and may you bless us that we might have deeper understanding of these things. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, connected to each other. When we look at this world, we do not see a principle of survival of the fittest, where everything is trying to outsmart and outperform the other. What we see is that everything is connected to each other. We are all connected into the scope of this everything in this world. And even when we look outside into the celestial bodies like the stars, the moon, the sun, we realize that we are dependent upon them and that we are connected in some way or the other. And so a famous saying says, no man is an island, and I'm used to the second part, no man stands alone. No man is an island, no man stands alone. And yet we want to see from a scientific point of view that science tries to prove to us falsely, and we're going to look at some of those scientific things that they've been putting out and show that they do not teach an idea of the survival of the fittest. They teach an idea, or they teach something that we are dependent upon other things. We are all dependent and we are all connected in this world. And there is such a thing that something has gone wrong, but the Bible explains what's gone wrong. The Bible says call it sin and call it selfishness. And so science is trying to bring selfishness and try to prove selfishness as they look at this world. And we want to disprove that this world doesn't teach selfishness. It teaches that says sin has happened and that the corruption of man has caused him to become selfish and to think himself as an island and think himself that he stands alone. Throughout history, God has been showing that our actions affect each other. Our action affects each other. When you do something, there's a cause and effect. We are connected to the earth. We are connected to the sky, the animals, and the plants. That's the reality. When you look at it, we are connected. They're interconnection. And our life matters, and your life matters, and my life matters. And that your life affects my life, and my life affects your life. And that we are all in this thing together. We are not all trying to survive and see how we can take each other down and how we can do the best. That's the whole idea of what Wall Street exists upon. That's the whole idea of what drug dealers exist upon. They're both of the same kind of cloth. They're cut out of the same dirty cloth. And their intention is that I'm going to sell drugs, I'm going to destroy the whole community so I can drive a nice car. It's the same cloth that a person who is in this rat race and thinking that they're going to sell crazy music like rock and roll and rap to the community and destroy the community. But yet at the end of the day, they're destroying themselves because they have to now live in the community. You have to run out of the community that they've helped to destroy. Our life matter and your life matter. Look at the recent discussions about global warming. When you look at global warming, you realize that says we do affect the air that we breathe. We do. If we decide that we're going to burn everything down and create toxic chemicals and throw them everywhere, where are we going to live? Because we have destroyed the environment, and now after we have destroyed the environment, where are we going to live? Because we are killing the place that we need to live on. So we are connected in some way or the other. And how about the mass death of bees? We have seen many stories about bees dying out, and if the bees die out, then it affects the amount of pollination that can go on to feed us. But why the bees are dying? They have done recent studies and realized that the bees are dying because, again, the insecticides that they're using. If you throw insecticides out there to kill insects, what will probably die? The bee. Now you've killed that bee because you refuse to understand, you refuse to do organic or natural farming because you must do big conglomerate farming. So now you've killed all the bees now, so what are you going to eat? You realize now that you're dependent upon the world and it's not the survival of the fittest, because human beings are fitter than all animals. So let us show our fitness by killing every single insect, every single plant, and let me see how you survive. Then you realize that says you're connected in some ways, and it's not about the survival of the fittest, but it's about managing the resources that God has blessed us with. Also, we look at the whales dying out and we realize the same thing. This life is not about the survival of the fittest, but about the strong helping the weak. The strong helping the weak and the strong helping those that he has dominion over. But when the regular way of a secular pagan king is that he work and overwork those who is over so he can live lavishly. Because he's corrupt And so all they have done is try to put a modern spin on an old problem that the world always faced, which is the rich oppressing the poor, the strong oppressing the weak. It's basically what we call the schoolyard bully syndrome. Now, the survival of the fittest was not a term that Darwin used, but it was more used a term of natural selection. Naturally to select who goes next or who succeed by natural processes. Natural processes. Another way for this to look at is not just natural selection, but options. If you're going to make a selection, that automatically gives you that you have option. Right? You have options, and those options you're going to select from the option. I have A, B, C, D, and I choose one of them. That would be, but these choices are made by natural selection, by natural processes. This is the premise of the theory of evolution, or the theory of certain social Darwinists. Now, those options would cause you that says whoever or whatever naturally is making that selection would have to have intelligence to make choices. So not only the choices would have to be available, but the intelligence to make choice would have to be available. Now, keep that in mind when we go into some of our analysis, a more deeper analysis of this idea of natural selection. So again, natural selection is a natural process of the way things are selected, right? And also that the selection has to include the thought of options. The options would have to be there, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z. Also, the intelligence would have to be there to make the selection, because the intelligence would have to be there to know what to select. In other words, you go to the car dealership and you want to select a car. You select the car based upon options and based upon the intelligence of knowing what you want. But if you don't know what you want because you have no intelligence and you don't have any choices, can you make a selection? No. So again, in brief, survival of the fittest, natural selection, options, intelligence, they conclude that this means the weak die off. The weak die off. And this is where we have this idea here of why does survival of the fittest create oppressors like Adolf Hitler? Create slavery. Because the weak die off. And who is stronger? If I have a gun and you don't have a gun, who is stronger? So I have two choices. I could decide to protect you with that gun from other arms, or I could decide to oppress you. They say, well, natural selection is I'll shoot you or I'll slave you. Because they're corrupt and they're viewing nature in the way their corrupt mind works. Because they're abominable. Or only the strong survive. That means only the strong survive. Again, if I'm in a situation and I'm stronger than you, am I going to sacrifice my life so that you should live, or am I going to take you out so that I should live? It depends on your corrupt thinking. If you're corrupt, you will say, well, I'm stronger, so I'm going to survive and you die. Is that natural means? Is that option? Is that the way it's supposed to work? Or is that you're a monster? And because you're stronger, you're going to use your strength to do wrong to others? That's the question. The question so much is not so much a scientific question, but a social and moral question. And when you understand the morality of it, you understand the scientists are barbaric for teaching this thing to the kids. Now, the measure of a society is how it treats its weakest members. The measure of a society is how it treats its weakest members. Now, this is a famous saying that somebody and people always say, and nobody knows who created the saying. But it's an important saying, because when you look at society, and you look at the societies who have embraced this idea of social Darwinism, embraced this idea of evolution, how do they treat the weakest amongst them? How do they treat the weakest among them? Do they treat the weakest among them any different from oppressors in the past? In millennia past? Or they treat them the same way? So you realize that the principle is an embrace of evil. It's embracing evil. It is not a principle of science. It's a principle of embracing the evil that is inside of man, to oppress his fellow men and to take advantage of the weak. Nothing new under the sun. That's what the Bible says. Now, in connection to each other, we read a statement or this text found in Exodus chapter 22, verse 21 through 27. This was our scripture reading of the day. It says, "Thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppress him, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt." Whenever I hear people talk, especially in America and different countries that has wealth, about the stranger, they talk about the stranger in such a derogatory way, let me know that they are filled with this concept of the survival of the fittest. Because when I remember a few years back, when the economic boom was happening with the housing market, the Mexicans were building the house, and different people from other South American countries were building the mansions. The moment the economy started to go down because of greed and the survival of the fittest mindset from those who are in the banking sector, they started talking about kick the foreigners out of the country. Notice again, it was not those guys that injured themselves and those guys that done harm to themselves and worked themselves to help build the riches of the country up, who were strangers. They were like, says, what should we do with the poor? What should we do? We kick them out of the country. Now, those people a lot of them were created by NAFTA and by the illegal transaction that they did to profit the rich. And now that they fled into the country, or they came to the country to make money, they say, let's push them out. How do you treat those who are strangers? The Lord was very specific to Israel. Don't get this idea into your mind. Take care of the strangers among you. Treat them right. Don't vex the strangers, right? Nor oppress him. And so I hear even Christians saying this, and it's very appalling to watch Christians who like to vex people because they say they're undocumented, so you can treat them bad. Ye shall not afflict a widow, any widow, or fatherless. And they talk so derogatory about people who are on welfare. And it tells me that says this is an age-old problem. Here Moses is writing this how many thousands years ago. Nothing new under the sun. But people have come up with new principles to try to validate this whole idea here of man's corruption. If thou afflict them in any wise, and they cry at all unto me, I will surely hear their cry. And so people say they don't believe in no God. But God is answering the cry of those who are oppressed. You're just not seeing how he's answering a prayer. And if you oppress them, you will get the punishment that come in your way. And you realize that you said there's still no God, but your punishment will come. Verse 24 says, and my rod shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives be widows, and your children fatherless. If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as an usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. What is the process of the survival of the fittest on a social level? It is a process that you oppress people who are poor. A man has not a good credit. He wants to own a house. You're going to give him a subprime loan. You give him a subprime loan knowing that he cannot pay 16, 15, 17% on that home, and he's going to foreclose. And you say, well, you know, he was weak, and this is Darwinism at play. I capitalized on him because this is a capitalist system. You're wicked, and God will punish you. And so when the crash happened, people were saying, oh, crash happened in the country's not going down. The Lord is just helping to wipe out some of those rich people that stole from people. Answering the cry of the poor. If you lose your job, what they'll do, they start hiking up your credit card interest rate. You already lost your job. Why are they putting the credit rate? If you can't pay it at a certain amount, what are you going to pay it at a higher amount? But they say, well, it's a survival of the fittest. We're fitter and we're going to survive. Instead of freezing the interest, freezing the amount of money the person owns, give them no more debt, or make the debt go up no further and figure out a way to help them in the situation. What they do, they try to say they can capitalize, push the person into bankruptcy. And they say, well, this is capitalism. Deal with it. And so deal with it. But then when the bad come, don't cry. Because God will send the bad come so to wipe out your finances that you lend people on usury, and calling it survival of the fittest. If thou at all take thy neighbor's raiment as a pledge, thou shalt deliver it unto him by the sun goeth down. What happens when the sun goes down? Does it get cold or does it get hot? It get cold, right? Now you take the man clothes and it's getting cold, sun is going down. How are you going to take everything the man has and say it's the survival of the fittest? You rip off the poor and do the poor so bad, and then you say, well, he's homeless, who cares? He has no clothes to wear, who cares? It says, if thou at all take the neighbor, verse 27, for that is his covering only. It is his raiment of his skin, wherein shall he sleep. And it shall come to pass, when he cried unto me, that I will deliver, I will hear, for I am gracious. If we believe in the survival of the fittest is the principle of life, then what do we do with the Sandusky's of this world? Because Sandusky, as I say, took advantage of those who were less than. We should celebrate him, or should we lock him up in prison? As a society, we say, you know what happened? He's a monster. We should lock him up in prison. But why are we locking him up? He just took advantage of those who were weaker. Is that the principle of survival of the fittest working? Is that the principle of natural selection? Or is it that we say, no, this person is a monster, we lock him up? And that's what society does. Society does not validate people who take advantage of others. What do we do with the Adolf Hitlers of this world? Do we say it's worth declaring a war to destroy somebody like that? Or will take people and gas them and kill them? And say that says they're inferior because they're not Aryan and they're not the end product of evolution, so hence they should be destroyed? Or do we say, no, they're wrong, we're going to mount a war and we're going to stop him from his monstrous dealing? But we're not going to address this issue of survival of fittest that created a monster like himself. Or those that prey on the weak and poor among us. So in essence, the teaching of survival of fittest. Oh, the next question I wanted to have here is, what do we do with the corrupt bankers of this world? What do? We said they're monsters, they rip off people. The people that they gave most of the loans to were people who were from black communities or poor whites. So what do we do with them? What did we do with those monsters? Did we prosecute them? So we didn't prosecute them. Why we didn't prosecute them? Because they had money to pay lawyers. They had money to pay lobbyists. And so in essence, we kind of say with some people, we allow them to continue their policy or their social policy of survival of the fittest. The rich prey on the young, or the rich prey on the foolish, or the rich prey upon those who are weak or not as intelligent. You take advantage of them. Is that how we do and how we run our society? In a sense, that's how we run our society. So in society, we still have some level of acceptance of the whole idea that if you're bigger and you're stronger, you can destroy the weaker. And then we say they're too big to fail, and so we continue with these policies that are put forth by lawyers to protect these class of people, to let them live in the principles of the survival of the fittest. Now, what if we treat each other like Christopher Columbus treated the natives wherever he went? What would happen? What if we say, well, who have the money, who has the guns, who have the machetes or the swords? We could just wipe out everybody that treat us nice. Again, do we validate and say, oh yes, the survival of the fittest is the right policy, because they're fitter, they win out, and the weaker lose out? So what happened? Christopher Columbus go to an island, and all the natives come out nice and peaceful, and they come and give presents, and they give gold and flowers and food, and then Christopher Columbus start rape and kill everybody and wipe them out. And then we say, yay for Christopher Columbus, excellent job, he survived and they weren't fit enough. Is that what we say, or we say it was a monster? How do we view it? How do we view it? And so, when we look at this, we realize that the principle that was put forth there is often the principle that state the clear aims of Darwin. Now, the original title of Darwin's book, published on 24th of November, 1859, this is the original title, a very long title, and this is the premise of his research on the origin of the species by means of natural selection, or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. Again, this is the original premise of Darwin's book. If you look at this, and especially end, it says the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. Now, many people say that the book wasn't a book about race. It wasn't a book about the preservation of a favored race, because he never mentioned race in the book. He was talking about natural selection as observed in nature. But if you look at it, the premise was not so much to talk about, if you want to call it nature, but was to learn from nature how another race is preserved. And that the way the race is preserved is by means of natural selection, or the survival of the fittest in a struggle. That means each nation is struggling to survive. Each nation is struggling to survive. And if I have to destroy your nation for me to survive, that is the survival of the fittest. I'm not here to bless you, but I'm here to control you or to destroy you. And if I have to destroy you so that I should survive, then that's the right way. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go out and try to find evidence in nature to prove my theory. I don't have to talk about the theory, I just state you what the theory is. This theory is in a struggle for life. And in this way is how monsters were created and still are created. Because this is what man believes he has to do Now, Darwin did not invent the phrase survival of the fittest. It was Herbert Spencer, a social Darwinist, who thought that if we allowed the rich to get richer, it would be good for society and discourage the poor from having too many kids and surviving. Herbert Spencer first used the phrase after reading Charles Darwin on the Origin of Species in the Principle of Biology, in which he drew parallels between his own economic theories and Darwin's biological ones, writing, "This survival of the fittest, which I have here sought to express in mechanical terms, is that which Mr. Darwin has called natural selection, or the preservation of a favored race in the struggle for life." Notice, this is in 1864. He's here and teaching from an economic standpoint and from a standpoint of social engineering or social structure, that the whole idea is teaching is that says one race dominates or exists in a struggle for survival. Now, is that the reality of life? That in order for me to survive, I must destroy you? I must win? I must beat you? I must dominate you in order for me to survive? Is that the reality of life? Or is it the reality of the corrupt thinking of men? It's a reality of the corrupt thinking of man, not the reality of life. Now the text here I want to have to read here in the connection that we have to each other who are weaker. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 22 and 23. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 22 and 23. Reads, "Rob not the poor, because he is" what? Poor. Don't do it. Don't say a man is poor, so I'm going to rob him because he can't do anything about it. Because he's not strong enough to repel me, and he's not strong enough to do this. Is that the attitude that many people have? You don't rob the poor because he's poor. You don't keep stealing people's money because he's addicted to gambling or so forth. Taking advantage of people. Notice most of the liquor stores are found in poor communities. The owners of those liquor stores are cursed because they're taking from the poor who don't even have it already and destroying their lives so that you can live big. This is the process of survival of the fittest. And Proverbs 22 says, "Neither oppress the afflicted in the gate." So somebody's afflicted, whether it be with disease or mental illness. So you know what they do? They afflict them even more, oppress them more. They take from them more. Because if they're weak-minded, well, they say Darwin won again because they're stupid. As a society, you don't take advantage of people because they're less than. And this is what they're teaching. So the Lord will plead their cause and spoil the soul of those that spoil them. And so we see a curse upon the society. We see so much curse upon the society because of the wickedness of the society. And they keep, as I say, every time I notice, they're running for cancer, they're running for this, and they're running for that. And they're running, but they don't realize the problem. You're corrupt. You keep oppressing people because they're less than, and keep fighting wars and killing people with no answer for why do you just kill all these poor people for? With a lie. And going to be fighting other wars now for a lie, and then think that it's not going to come back. Malachi chapter 3 verse 5. Malachi chapter 3 verse 5. Again, we're all connected together. Because what if I get poor? What if I get afflicted? Are they going to take advantage of me? And guess what they do? They take advantage of you. I always say to people that say, you could rip off all you want, but you know what I mean? You could steal all the money you want. But when it's all said and done, the lawyer is going to take your money and the doctor is going to take your money. And when he rip everybody off and he steal everybody off and overcharge everybody and create this mess that we have in the healthcare system in America especially, then what happens is his wife or his wife husband or his wife new boyfriend will take all that money that he stole. Is that the reality of life? Because the question is, who is the fittest? The kids will take the money and take it right up their nose in cocaine. And the question is, who is the fittest? The kids are the fittest? Because you will not steal from people and end up enjoying that theft. Malachi chapter 3 verse 5 says, "I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerer, and against the adulterer, and against false swearers, and against those that oppress the hireling in his wages." Somebody say, "Oh yeah, no, this text doesn't mean that, because even people," look, the text is talking about people who hire people. And again, you notice, they always boast about the millions and millions of dollars that they make and the billions and billions of dollars they make, but they can't raise minimum wage to a sensible figure for poor people to survive. And so they say, but you're paying them, that's what they agree upon. Yeah, but you're ripping off the man. It's worth more. the work he's doing. The hireling his wage, the widow, and the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his what? From his rights. Because they'll say the stranger have no right because they're illegal. The man is working, right? He's picking your fields. You're not going to pick the fields. So somebody needs to pick the field. So if you know somebody needs to pick the field, why don't you treat him right? But you treat him wrong as he's picking your field because you say it's the survival of the fittest. And you're fit and he has to deal with it. But God doesn't like this. And God doesn't like ugly. And fear not me, says the Lord of hosts. They don't fear God because they tell themselves that they evolved, they came from monkeys. So they can do whatever they want to people. And there's no God, so I don't have to pay no penalty for it. Prophetic utterance here. There's a prophetic utterance that I want to read before I get going to the scientific information. It says here, and unto the angel of the church of the Laodicean write, these things says the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of God. God here, or Jesus Christ here, referring to himself as the creation of God. We believe in Jesus Christ and we believe that he created the heavens and the earth. In Revelation chapter 14, verse 6 and 7, it says, I saw not the angel fly in the midst of heaven, having everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made the heaven and the earth, the sea, and the fountains of water. This text tells us that says a message will have to go to the world to bring them not only into response and respect to God, but also to let them understand that they will be judged for their actions, especially judged by the God that created the heaven and the earth. We want to look at the human body as the first example of why evolution is just silliness, as I call it. And the human body is one of the most powerful things that God has created and that we live in. We experience it. When we touch, we're touching the human body. And if you know the human body, because you have one, if you hear me, you will agree to the fact that it's a marvelous piece of machinery. It is the most marvelous piece of machinery. The intelligence in the human body is way beyond anything that's in the universe. Way beyond. There's so much intelligence packed in the human body. What it does is not even like what the animal does, especially because of the way our brain work. Our brain work nothing like the animals. And so the moment we come into Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, it says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. So we know God created the heaven and the earth. And Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 says, and God says, let us make man in our image. So we know that when man was made in the image of God. And you know, the image is not the thing, but the image is like the thing. All right? A picture is not you, but a picture is a representation of you. So we know that there's something beautiful and wonderful about us. And when we think about ourselves, we have certain attributes that God does have. Some of the attributes we have of God we can imagine and we can invent. We can think about it and make it. We can think about it and design it. We are creative. We love beauty, aesthetic, all these things. And yet they have not figured out how all these things evolve inside of us. Because they were put there because God made us after our likeness and let them have what? Dominion over the fish of the sea. Now this is something that humanity has. Humanity has something in it that cannot be explained. Why do we like to have dominion? See, that dominion was not given so that we have survival of the fittest mode, but so that we care for the things that we have around us. That was that the dominion was given. When man has dominion, has money, has power, has influence, he was not originally created to use it to damage and hurt. He was created to use it to bless. So they see that dominion and they say, oh, it is the survival of the fittest. It is not. It was given to us to bless. But because man is selfish and corrupt, he'll take and amass and die, leave money in a vault somewhere while the poor is all around him starving for food. So here he gives dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over the cattle and over all the earth and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So this is one of the things that is stated by God and there's no explanation for it. And this is why men fight wars, because something has gone wrong in the brain. And that dominion expresses itself in ungodly terms and immoral terms. If I can't dominate you, I'm going to destroy you. That's the glitch. And the idea is not to bless, is to have control over. Verse 27 says of Genesis chapter 1, so God created man in his own image. And in the image of God created he him, male and female. That's another important thing that is stated. He created two, but in his one image. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea again, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. We still see here that says no matter how big an animal is, man can tame it. Man can tame it. Man can tame a snake, man can tame a lion, man can tame anything. He has dominion over it. Doesn't matter the size of the thing. Man has dominion over it. And he has control over it. The question is, we in society, we see if a person abuses an animal, we say that person is barbaric. Because again, something inside of us tells us that that's not what we're supposed to do with our authority. We're not supposed to take our dominion or our strength or power and beat the thing down. We're supposed to care for it. And so we're supposed to care for the animals, so we're supposed to care for each other. And God says, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of the yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. No matter what they tell you in the survival fittest, because the survival fittest concept is that the dinosaurs are eating each other and eating other animals. And everything is eating everybody. Everything is eating flesh. Yet Moses says, no, we were created to eat what? Plant. And those who are, as I say, are the most serious and fanatical about eating flesh are the ones that are the sickest with all every disease known to man. And are the ones that degenerate the fastest. Because why? That diet was not the original diet given to man. And this is uncontrovertible facts. And those, I say, who are big in evolution, they believe in their meat. And where they're going with that, they're going to a process of not evolution, but devolution. Or devolution, where they're devolving and they're falling apart, not evolving. The human body, as I said, is one of the most powerful things that we have as an example, because we experience it. And if you look at the human body, no part of the human body functions without the other part. Now, there's so much system within the human body, but all the individual systems are necessary for function. And so the question that is asked for those who say they believe in evolution, how does the human body evolve without one piece? And how does it evolve, as I stated before, with all the different options available? Because again, when you're going to put it together, everything has to be there. Because the question is, how do you have the body without the brain? How do you have the body without the heart? How do you have the digestive system without the mouth? How do you have the digestive system without the teeth? How do you have the foot? How do you have the circulatory system? How do you develop the circulatory system, get it in the body? The nervous system, because if the nervous system is not in place, what is the man going to do? The man's going to destroy himself because he can't feel anything. He has no feelings, and so he's not going to give the opportunity for the body to develop. None of the pieces in the body, when you look at all the different components of the body, the muscle, the bones, all of it has to be there in one piece, and if it's not there in one piece, it's not going to be able to develop. And this is the reality. In Job chapter 38, verse 36, it says, who had put wisdom in the inward parts, or who had given understanding to the heart? Again, how does the heart develop? The heart develops, but even if it develops, he needs a circulatory system. But then it needs a sense to know to beat. And how to beat, how to increase pressure, how to not increase pressure. When you're running, the heart would have to already know how to increase or how to decrease. How to adjust when you're sleeping. How do you evolve sleeping? How do you evolve so much things? It's nothing that the Lord has fearfully and wonderfully made us and put intelligence inside of us that is beyond our computation and that is not explainable. Now, one of the persons that came up with this realization that it is not possible for evolution to happen, there's no mechanical process that is possible, is this gentleman called Michael Behe. And he's an American biochemist, author, and intelligent design advocate. He currently serves as professor of biochemistry of Lehigh University in Pennsylvania and as a senior fellow of the Discovery Institute Center for Science and Culture. B.E. came to believe that there was evidence at a biochemical level that there were systems that were irreducible complex. These were systems that he thought could not, even in principle, have evolved by natural selection, and thus must have been created by an intelligent designer, which he believed to be the only possible alternative explanation for such complex structures. The logic is very similar to the watchmaker analogy given by William Paley in 1802 as proof of divine creator. So again, the systems are so complex, he's saying, that how do you evolve them? Because each piece are needed at one instance, according to what the Bible states. Continue to read. If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. This was Charles Darwin's statement. So Charles Darwin is saying that says, if you can prove that evolution could happen by successive process, he says, then there's no theory of evolution. Why? Because if you look, one of the things that have puzzled geologists is that they can't find the missing links. That means if life was just one continual process of evolution, they'll be scattered all throughout the earth crust, all over the earth, the successive fossils, proving the connection. But what they have is, you find this fossil and it's a dog, or a cat, or an elephant, even if it's what they call the one with the big tusk, the woolly mammoth, right? It is what it is. But they can't find all the connections between the woolly mammoth, or how does the man evolve. They can't find all those connections. What they find is very specialized fossils that represent something that we know today. And it's identifiable. Or you find something that we do not have today, and you say it was extinct. You can find others like it. But the connections, all the millions and millions and billions of connections that should scatter all over the earth, is missing. And so similar with the geological problem that they have is similar with the biochemical problem and with all the physical problem. It is just no logical way of how you evolve the eye. In an interview, B.E. says, to Darwin, the cell was a black box. The inner workings were utterly mysterious to him. Now the black box has been opened up, and we know how it works. Applying Darwin's test to the ultra-complex world of molecular machinery and cellular system that have been discovered over the past 40 years, we can say that Darwin's theory has absolutely broken down. There is no such thing. No one at Harvard University, no one at the National Institutes of Health, no member of the National Academy of Science, no Nobel Prize winner, no one at all can give a detailed account of how the cilium or vision or blood clotting or any complex biochemical process might have developed in a Darwinian fashion. But we are here. Plants and animals are here. The complex systems are here. All these things got here somehow. If not by Darwinian fashion, then how? This is Behe in his book, page 187. Now again, very important. If you get a cut, you start to bleed. And now you're bleeding, and all of a sudden there's a whole source of biochemical process that's to happen, to send messengers and so forth to say that you're bleeding, you're losing blood. The intelligence has to be there to know what does losing blood mean. What does it mean to lose blood? What does it mean to be losing blood? And what do you do when blood starts to come? Now if I ask you, what would you create to make the blood stop flowing? We could be here for a few years trying to invent a process. But that process is already in the body, and the body just automatically start to clot. Now if you cut a tree, say when you cut a tree, the tree starts to lose sap. And then sap build up, get thicker and thicker and thicker, and then stop the bleeding. Or stop the sap from losing or coming out. That process is already in the tree. How did the tree develop that without dying? Because for human being to evolve, it would have to have that blood clotting mechanism in place, else the human being would die before the process. And where are the fossils of all the mistakes that are made? That are there. Same thing with vision. Before the person figure out how to see, what would happen to the human being again? It would drop off some cliff. Then the question is, how did the cliff came there in the first place? Why was there a cliff? Why did cliff evolve to be cliff? Why did stones evolve? Psyllium, any complex biochemical process. Continue on the same page. Clearly, if something was not put together gradually, then it must have been put together quickly or even suddenly. If adding individual pieces does not continually improve the function of the system, then multiple pieces have to be added together. So when people talk about the question that says, God created the heaven and the earth in 6 literal days, it makes sense that it only can be done that way. It couldn't be done long, because each piece is needed for another piece. And each piece is connected. So if you lengthen the process and make it go on forever, then you're not going to be able to have a complex system. Now on the board here I have, on the slides you have, he proposed this idea of a mousetrap. Now mousetrap is a very simple mechanism. You only have a few pieces. And so the he mousetrap here he proposed as a challenge to those who are out there talking about evolution. And if you look at the mousetrap, it's very simple. He has a base, he has a spring, and that spring is connected to the actual trap itself, and the spring is supposed to push the trap and to catch the rat. Also, it has a catch or a latch that holds the spring or holds the trap in place. And that thing that holds the trap in place is connected to a lever that the cheese is upon. Whenever the rat touches the cheese, it releases the safety, and the safety when it's release the trap, and it bam and kill that rat or trap that rat. Right? That's a mouse trap. And this is a beautiful mouse trap, but most mouse trap here has some jagged teeth to cut the rat and to slice him up and dice him up. Now, as you look at this this mouse trap, number one, now we want to go back to this old idea of natural selection. Natural selection has to have options, because when you're selecting naturally, you have to have options to select from. And that means that if you have options, you have to have the intelligence to know what option to select. And then now, if you have this intelligence to know what option to select, you also have to have intelligence to use it and to incorporate it into whatever you're selecting it to use for. So this they're saying that the universe and the body has this ability. Living things have this ability. But the problem with it is that if you start from a single cell amoeba, or anything what is single cell, let's say, that came out of the primordial soup, that thing now has to have options to select to keep building more complex organism. Right? So if you go back to this mousetrap, now you look at it, you have that spring. Now, what would require is that the mousetrap has to know that he wants to build a mousetrap. And the mousetrap needs to know that says, hit want to kill rats. Right? Or cats. No, kill rats or mice. Right? So we stick with the rats and mice. Or bears. Whatever the trap want to kill. Right? And that mousetrap now has to know that says he has to select a spring. But before the mousetrap select the spring, the mousetrap has to select a base. And he has to select connectors to connect the spring. Right? And so let's just say the mousetrap have the intelligence. Then the mousetrap have to select spring. So now he has to have an option of spring. So what option of spring will you put in front of it? How about a spring in a pen? The mousetrap now have to know that says, no, that's not good enough because it's not having enough force and it's configured wrong. Because you have to have a section on the mousetrap that to pull forward the catch or the trap. Right? So that's not going to work. So how about the spring in a car to make the car bounce around, the spring? Could the mousetrap select that spring? That's an option. What's wrong with that spring? It's too big, right? You need thousands of pounds or 1,000 pounds or something per spring to be able to work that spring. So we know that's not going to work. That spring is a bad spring. So again, we want to select another spring. How about we go with a mousetrap spring? A spring for a mousetrap. Ding, 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 ding. So the mousetrap knows, I say, I need to select a spring for a mousetrap. Where did that mousetrap spring come from? What manufacturer do you go to get that spring? Why did the manufacturer build a spring? Did the manufacturer know that it needs to be building spring for mousetrap? No, somebody now has to make the mousetrap and have to go to a manufacturer and say, I need this spring here because this spring is for the mousetrap I'm inventing. It makes no sense that the thing that is evolving is naturally selecting from what? Or is naturally developing why? Why would an amoeba develop a human being? What does he understand about a human being? And why he says I need to keep inventing myself until I reach a human being? What is he selecting from? Because again, natural selection means that you have options and you have the intelligence and you know how to incorporate it. Because again, even after you get the perfect spring, what do you do with it? Because how do you build a perfect spring without the catch and without the safety and without the cheese and without the rat? And why would you want to kill the rat? Because you want to kill the rat because you know the rat is a nuisance. But how did you know the rat is a nuisance? ATP is a process in our body where the conversion of glucose molecules into stored energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate, ATP, requires many chemical reactions catalyzed by complex enzymes. So you need the enzymes, various different complex enzymes, and as on the board here, I'm showing you the different enzymes at each process. And each process, I think, is about 17 different processes to be able to convert glucose molecule into stored energy. So your body uses stored energy when it calls for it. So most naturally, this process in itself is each process needs an enzyme to change until you store the energy. And then when it's time for the energy to be used, you have to reconvert, and then you have energy available. So the body needs to know first as it's evolving that I'm going to need stored energy. Because when I'm going to do that 5K or that 10K run, I'm going to need that stored energy. So the body needs to know, okay, I need to have stored energy to do a 5K or 10K run. So I need to invent a process by natural selection that will store energy. So what the body does now, it says it goes now to the energy, the process maker. And say to the process maker, create ATP for me because I need to store energy. Does that make sense? Makes no sense at all. How do you naturally select something that does not exist? You have to create it. And how do you create it if you don't know you need it? Because to create means you have intelligence to know that you need it. And how do you know that the body is going to need stored energy? Why don't the people just eat food when they need it and get the energy right away? Does that work? No, it doesn't work. And so this is a process of ATP. And as you look at it, very complex process with all these different chemical enzymes. Where do you create these enzymes from? Where did they come from? God made them. Continue on the human body with the complexity of the human body, which the thing that breaks to me everything that anybody could talk about other than there's a creator, God. The human body, the zygote, which is a fertilized ovum, divides. Every cell was still unspecified. So again, the fertilized ovum, it starts out is very simple. It has the DNA, has all the information in there. And these cells are not specific, but they start to multiply and they start to divide. One cell divide two cell four, and they start to divide. But these cells are very unspecified. But these cells are going to turn into eyes. They're going to turn into mouth. They're going to turn into skin. Each cell is multi-potential. That means each cell, it could turn into an eye, a nose, a mouth, a foot. The original fertilized eggs will multiply. Each multiplication forms an extra replica of the original cell. This process does not continue unchanged. If it does, it would just produce a mass of one type of cell. So we just become a blob. Right? But by a miracle of design, because this thing has to be designed into it, some of these cells become skin, heart, muscle, lungs, and so forth. So they're replicating, they have all potential in them, each of the cell, but there's a point where it says, I'm not going to replicate into a replicatable cell, I'm going to replicate into a specific cell. That means there's a point where it says, stop doing what you're doing, replicate. Where does that intelligence come in the cell? The cell said, no, start breaking out into us, you need a nail. This person needs a nail. How does the person know they need a nail? In order for fertilization to take place, for the ovum to grow and child to develop inside her mother, inside his or her mom, every system of the body has to be present in both ovum and mother. including respiration. Is respiration going on inside of the ovum? Yes, but is the mother breathing also? Right. Cardiovascular processes has to happen. The nerves has to be working. Locomotion have to happen, and reproduction, the reproductive organ have to be there, because you can't have the head grow without the reproductive organ. So in order to be fruitful and multiply, you would have to design the whole process of being fruitful and multiply. Now, why does evolution know that you need to be fruitful and multiply? Because remember, everything is by chance. Why by chance? You must multiply. And if you must multiply, why do you need to multiply? How do you know that there's a earth, and there's air and oxygen, and that there's so forth and so on? Including the gastrointestinal function, circulatory function, because you could have all the digestive process going on, but you need to have the mother circulatory process to take it to the baby. But the baby also have to have the same process, because the baby have to take in nutrients in order for it to develop into the womb. The immune system have to be working, because you know immediately when that egg is attached, the body releases certain chemicals so that the mother's body doesn't attack the eggs, and there's a certain point where it pulls back and stops to produce that. And then there's a certain point the mother releases it. The immune system have to be totally functioning at all stages of that game. That immune system have to be very intelligent, because that immune system has to still protect the mom while even the baby is developing their immune system. Again, other systems that are not spoken about here has to be all in place, else the child cannot develop. Those systems cannot be reduced, because you can't say, well, we want a child to have a mother to have a baby, but we're going to pull out the respiratory system. Mother is dead. Pull out the nervous system. Mother is dead. You pull out any system you take out of the mom is dead itself, and the baby is dead. All the systems, you cannot reduce the human body to any, say, okay, we're going to take out this system. And you can't explain how any of these systems can evolve, because all of them has to have their place. And when you look at it, again, to me, it tells a story of connectivity. That even inside of our body, everything is needed. And when we get outside of our body, everything else is needed. Again, you could say, well, shut the sun off. We all live or we all die. We all die. Shut the moon off. Moon stop having your gravitational pull. We all drown. Because everything is connected, and it's not an issue of survival of the fittest, but it's an issue that we all connected and we all are independent. We are interdependent. Now in Psalm chapter 139, verse 13 and 14 says, for thou hast processed my reins. Thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth well. This is the testimony of the Bible. There's no other explanation from it, that there's an intelligent designer that designed this body that we have. And that he designed this body, and he gave us this body as a blessing to us, and not as something that came about by chance. We continue going down this line of reason, because we're looking at the body, and we're looking at how beautiful this body was designed, not accidentally made. The process of mitosis, cell division into two cells, each genetically identical, is not applicable to sexual reproduction. With procreation, cell division is uniquely different. Both sperm and ova are produced by a process known as meiosis. In this form of cell division, only half the species chromosome are to be found in each parent cell. Thus, in human beings, whereas all other body cells possess 46 chromosomes, sperm and ova possess only 23. This is generated the great diversity of form and characteristic possessed by human race. So as again, if how it works is half of the mom, half of the dad come together, you have a new child that sometimes don't even behave like the mom or the dad, doing their own thing, right? Again, this is design. Also, you have a situation here of sex drive and attraction. Now, in order for we to reproduce, you need what happen? You need sex drive and you need attraction. Where does attraction come from? Why does some people like certain things? As a matter of fact, for attraction, why do certain people like certain colors? I just never understand that. Or like certain textures, or like certain this. All of this is part of, I believe, again, the function of the human body, where you create that. And also sex drive. How does sex drive happen? Because in order for, how do you logically explain the process of sex drive when it comes on to evolution? To me, as I study this topic, which I do study and have seminars on, and if you look at this topic here of sex drive, it blows everything to me. It shuts down all the discussion of evolution. Shuts it down. I mean, we could talk, and we would spend the rest of the day talking about some more things and some more evidence. But this topic here of sex drive, to me, is unexplainable but design. And it gives me an understanding of God that there's just no explanation for. Because again, in order for there to be a child, the whole process of the sexual act creates a child. The whole process. And the whole process can't happen without design. Because what's the use of it? How does evolution know that says it must have reproduction? Why produce reproduction? And why produce the male and the female? Because can't have reproduction without the male and can't have reproduction without the female. Does that make no sense? And the whole function of reproduction is not there unless you have design. It has to be designed. It's a process of design because it's two halves, just like a chromosome. It's two halves of the same thing. And without the two, there's no one. And I know today they're saying to us that says, no, there's no such thing. God didn't create the heaven and earth and two men can be together. No such thing. It is male and female created in one, and it's the two halves of one process. And as you put the two processes together, you find that says this drive for a male to be with a female is something that is there. As a matter of fact, I'll say this for your thinking, because I know this here, you're familiar with this, that when you think about the whole process of a male and a female, and the sexes, it becomes very clear, and this is it, that the male is evolved and the female, not evolved, but is created and can be evolved in a way that the male looks rougher than the female. The male feels rougher than the female. The male talks different than the female. Not by accident. Everything about the female is female and the male is male. The male is supposed to be harder, stronger, more testosterone. Male is supposed to be softer, more testosterone. The way the female talk, the way the whole female reproductive system is like the female. It is feminine in its characteristics. The way the female think is feminine in her characteristics. And this is at birth. The moment the body differentiates and says this is female, the female act this way. The moment the body comes around and says this is male, the male act this way. A male don't think like a female. The thought process is different. The thought process of a male is male, thought process of a female is female. And as I say, if we didn't have younger ones here, I'll go into some of the details. And I could keep going and going and going on this topic, and it's all female, all male. Totally different in the thinking. And so you adults, you can figure out what I'm talking about. And that blows to me every discussion about whatever. As I say, I would say to any, if a male tell me that they believe in evolution, I say, stop for a second and observe a female. And if you don't see intelligent design in that, then you come back to me and we talk. You're probably not liking the right sex. There's no way a male can deal with a female and come away from that and say, oh, that was by accident. That's a specific action. And even the way the guy brain think, the guy brain don't even need the physical, just observing a female, hearing a female. Everything is designed to affect the thinking of the brain of a male. It's just the way it works. His thoughts is configured a certain way. His physical body is configured a certain way for a female. I don't know how they get onto this type of stuff here. I close on this thought because for the sake of time, and then we go back into our second presentation from here. But I introduce this idea of ecologic system. In Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 35, it says, "Thus says the Lord God, who giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and the star for a light by night, which divided the sea when the waves thereof roar. The Lord God is his name." When we think again, moving away from the body, as I said, there's much more we could talk about the body, the way the function of the body. But when we think about the ecological system, again, the ecological system that we have, not just in the earth, but also outside of the earth is dependent upon outside elements. Again, it teaches a story of not the survival of fitness, but that says no man is an island, no man stands alone. That the earth is dependent upon the sun. Without the light of the sun, life would not be the way it is today. We will not have the seasons. We will not have the foods that we eat. We will not have the things that we have that are dependent upon the sun, because the sun is part of us, as of the earth. And the sun, we're dependent upon the sun. We're dependent upon the gravitational pull and control of the moon. All these things we're dependent upon. And what it is that when people say that says, well, life here just happened by accident. My question and my problem here is that says, you look at the moon and it's so beautifully shaped. You look at the sun properly shaped. You look at the earth properly shaped. How that came about by an explosion. Because what scientists is trying to teach us is that says there was rapid expansion of matter in the earth. Some people call it the Big Bang Theory. It moving so fast that it's at the explosion, at the speed of an explosion. And out of that explosion of matter, that voila, the sun just came there and it started to sit on its axis. And the moon just in the middle of nowhere just sitting there on an axis. And the earth there is on an axis, and it is affected because it's perfectly placed away from the sun. Just perfect by one big chance. And then from there, from that explosion, first thing happened is that the sun stopped. It is a hydrogen bomb, and it was lit. Something lighted on fire and it started burning. And that fire gives the possibility for light to get to the earth and heat to get to the earth to make the earth function properly. All this happened by one big chance. And this is what they want to tell us. But when we look at this system of ecology, when we look at the system of dependence, one thing dependent upon the other, what we come away with is a reality that says this earth is not on its own. That this world is not on its own, and you and me, we're dependent upon each other. And we're there for the blessing of each other. I pray that God may bless you as we sing our closing hymn.